Hi everyone, this is Father Vasilios Bassakyros, and I'm welcoming all of you to a new series of programs at New Greek TV that would bring a spiritual enlightenment that many of us don't receive on Sundays or during the week because we can't attend church because we're working or other problems that arise within our families and within our realm of our work. So what we'd like to do is bring to you a short pieces that I will do on different subjects to try to get you to see the true meaning of the Bible in its way in working within our lives, so that we can progress through our life and understand what it is that we have to do to try to reach peace and harmony within ourselves. As we say, that we can become more at ease with the church and also with the Gospels, and that we try to assimilate within ourselves those understandings. As we begin this period of Great Lent, a wonderful time within our church, we hear 2 or 3 parables and stories that Jesus is trying to relay to us about what we should do and how we should live our lives. As they get closer and closer to that great day of Monday of Great Lent, where we begin Lent, we understand that the day before that Sunday, we celebrate something called Forgiveness Sunday, where we should forgive those who we have done wrong to, and those who have done wrong to us. And one story that I like to relay in this way, that should try to keep and try to inform you about how we should see ourselves and how we can progress in life with certain understandings. One of them is entitled The Stones. When I entered St. Catherine's Monastery many years ago, I had the chance to be with a wonderful Geronda, a pneumatiko of the mountain, Father Adrianos. Father Adrianos was living by himself up in a hermitage where guests would come to see him and stay and try to glean from him knowledge that he saw and that he understood about life. But what took place many times is that he was a very, very quiet man. And he sometimes would not refuse to say or comment, but just refrain, because he had the ability of seeing within people's souls, which is a great grace, but it needs great discernment. And when I was there, I had the opportunity on one occasion, the first occasion of meeting him, was right after the service, because he would come down from the mountain where he was living onto the monastery at St. Catherine's in Sinai, and he would come down right after our Friday evening Great Vespers. And as he was coming down, he came into the church, into the Basilica of St. Catherine, and we would all meet him later on after that. And he was just a person who, when you saw him and was around him, you realized that he had this great peace. When I first saw him and I heard him speak, he reminded me of someone who we know very well from Star Wars, Yoda. Yoda was a very short individual, as Father Adrianos is, and now he passed into the other life. But he had this ability to cut through all the weight of the world and put things into very simple terms, as Christ does for us during these parables and during these lessons that he gives the disciples and apostles. One of these stories happened when I was going up for the first time to his hermitage. We met each other, and I realized that this was a person who could understand the shortcomings of life. And what he did on the way up was we were traversing through these very, very difficult goat trails to get up to where his hermitage is. And as we're walking, I would trip upon these very little stones, these granite stones that came off from the mountain itself, because it's all granite. And as you walk up the trails, they would get underneath your shoe or boot, and you would trip, because they make your foot slide, because it was very steep and very narrow. And as you walk, you try to pick yourself up, and you're very careful as you go. So as you go up this trail, you happen to trip and fall many, many times. So what you do is you pick yourself up and you go on. We finally get up to his hermitage, and as I enter this gate of his hermitage into the property that he was upon, I start to smell this wonderful aroma of roses. It was the sweetest smell I've ever smelt in my life. And as I approached it, I realized that it was these roses that were the size of my fist. I've never seen roses that big in my life. And as I got to them, I asked the hermit, I said, Yerunda, I said, these are beautiful roses. He says, do you like them? I said, yes. I said, how do you grow them? Because there's no water. He says, well, they get fed by the underwater streams from the mountains as it trickles down. So he said, you like it? I said, yes. So he grabbed one off the stem and gave it to me. And he says, let's just walk on into the hermitage. And as I look, I see this wonderful hut pressed against the back of the wall of this mountain made out of stones. And we walked inside and we sat down, and he asked, would you like something to drink? And I said, yes. He gave me a beautiful glass of water that had a tint to it that was crystal clear, but a bluish tint because of the minerals that were in the water. And because it's water that comes from the mountain itself, out of a little pond that he had, which would gather this water, and he would dip his cup in there and drink it. So he sat down, we talked for a while, and he said, Vasily, let me ask you a question. As you were walking up the mountain, what happened? And I said, well, I had this opportunity to go up and look around and see all these beautiful sights. And he said, what else? I said, well, I tripped many times. He said, really? Why did you trip? I says, I looked down and there were these stones, this gravel that was gathered on the road, on the path, and I tripped. He said, well, what did you do? And I said, well, I got up, I cleaned myself off, and I walked on. And he said, oh, really? I said, yeah. How many times has this happened? I said, this happened numerous times as I was going. He said, really? I said, yeah. He said, what did you do every time? I said, well, I cleaned myself off and I kept walking and following you. He says, well, that's wonderful. But let me tell you what they do in this world. I said, really? He said, yes. He said, do you know what they do in this world, Vasily? I said, no. He says, when people trip in the world, going up on the road, on their life, they look down to try to find the stone that tripped them. And as they're looking down, they're cursing at all the stones that are around them. They find one that they believe is the one that tripped them. They pick it up, they look at it, and they curse at it. And they ask, why did you trip me on this road? You know where I want to go. You know I'm trying to get to where I have to be. Why are you tripping me? And of course, they're stones. And the stones can talk. So, in their hubris and arrogance, they take the stone, they put it in their pocket, and they say, one day, I know that you will let me know why you tripped me. And they walk on. And he said, Vasily, how many times did you trip again? I said, many times. You know how many times I tripped. I told you. He says, yes. Do you know what they do, Vasily? They collect all those stones. They put them in their pockets. And when they put them in their pockets, they get weighed down. They're climbing up a mountain of life. And as they climb up the mountain of life, the stones gather within themselves. and they can't walk any further. They can't head in the direction or where they want to go because all those stones, one day they believe, will tell them why they tripped them. And when I heard this, I started to realize what he was trying to tell me. What he was trying to say is that in our life, we walk around, and when people get in our way or stop us from doing something or keep persisting on hindering us from going where we are focused on going, we curse them out, and if they're not there, we put them in our pocket. And slowly, these stones work on us and our psyche. And sooner or later, we forget where we're going. We remember the stones, and the stones keep coming back and back and back within our life. And we can't see clearly through the way we have to go. There's once a story he said about, in relationship to this, about a glass of water and dirt. We are comprised of water and dirt. And if we take a glass of water, put dirt in it and water, the dirt sinks to the bottom and the water rises to the top. And if you hold it up to see through the water, you can. But if you hold it up to see through the dirt, you cannot. So what we do in our lives, in the same way as the stones, is we put a spoon within the water and we stir, because life makes us stir. And as we stir, the earth starts coming up into the water. And the clarity of where we're going, we can't see anymore. It becomes not this hidden, opaque type of vision. It's not clear. And what happens is that we're trying to see where we're going, and we're trying to see what we're going to do and what answers we should have in our life, and we can't do it. So he said, you know what you do? I said, no. He says, you do two things. You either take the spoon out and let it settle by itself, or you spin it as fast as you can. And if you ever climbed up a mountain, you realize that as you climb, you're getting more and more tired, and you're breathing heavier and heavier and heavier. And that's what life does to us as we climb the mountain, as I climb Sinai. The same way. The air gets thinner, and you breathe harder. It's 3 or 4 breaths to 1 breath where we are at sea level. And you're exhausted. And that's what happens when you spin it to try to separate the water from the earth, like a centrifuge. But the easiest thing to do is to take the spoon out of the cup and out of the glass and let it settle by itself. And how you let it to settle by yourself is to take the stones out of your life. Push them aside. And if you can push them aside and just leave them where they are, then you can see clearly where you're going. Nothing is affecting you in your life that is in the path that's negative. Your life, you have to realize, is going to move forward only when you say, God, forgive me, and God, forgive those who've done things to me. And as we start Lent, this is what we're supposed to do. Last night, we had Forgiveness Sunday, where we go to other people and we ask them for their forgiveness. So take the stones in your life out of your pocket. Ask these stones that tripped you to forgive you. And then go on with your life. My father had a great expression. Whenever things would go wrong, my father always looked at me and said, Vasily, in Greek, aphiseto. And in English means leave it alone. My yaya had one of the greatest expressions I ever heard of a woman who had one of the hardest lives you could imagine. And she said to me, Vasily, na thimithis to kalo ke θα αφήσεις το κακό. This is the same analogy. You should remember the good and forget the bad. So in your life and during this time of Great Lent, remember that you must always forgive those who have hurt you and done wrong to you, whether you know it or not, and ask forgiveness of those who you know or who you think you have hurt. So God bless you. Thos mazisu. May God bless you with a great Lent. May you see the truth of this world, and may you see the greatness of our Lord Jesus Christ, who used these wonderful parables to try to make us see who we are and how we should live out our lives as Christians. Because we all cannot live without sin, even though it may be the smallest that you could imagine. We have to go towards Christ, remove those sins from ourselves, and become Christ-like, so that we reflect that goodness that He has given us into the world. It's not how the world treats you, it's how you see the world that makes a difference. God bless you. Amen.